Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We take your source material, your articles, your research, your notes, and we cut right through the noise to deliver the knowledge you need fast.
And today we're doing a really critical financial deep dive into Dubai.
Right. The mission here is to figure out the true cost of living for a professional who's maybe considering an extended stay. We want to separate that online glitz from the actual day-to-day financial reality.
I mean, if you just scroll through social media, you would absolutely assume Dubai is reserved for people arriving on private jets.
Exactly. It makes the city seem, I don't know, exponentially more expensive than places like London or Paris or New York. But the sources we're looking at, they suggest that luxury narrative is, well, it's incomplete.
It's fundamentally incomplete. And what's fascinating is that the average cost of living in Dubai for an expat can be surprisingly manageable.
Manageable how?
Well, when you look at daily necessities, mid-range housing, it's often comparable to, or sometimes even cheaper than, those big European hubs.
Okay, and before we really get into the numbers, let's just set a quick baseline for you. Throughout this deep dive, we're going to be using an approximate conversion rate of 3.67 AED to $1, just to help ground all these costs.
You know, the key thing at play here is really expectations. The online algorithm, it promotes the exceptional, right? The $500 brunches, the designer shopping.
Yeah, you never see a picture of someone just taking the bus.
Exactly. It rarely shows the normal residential neighborhoods or the public transit or the value-focused services that professionals on these extended assignments actually rely on to keep their costs in check.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's tackle the biggest hurdle first. For any professional moving for a while, rent is the one expense that really determines if Dubai is affordable or not.
And this is where the market gets really complex. I mean, if you fixate on prime locations like downtown Dubai, right near the Burj Khalifa or the marina, yes, prices are exorbitant.
But that's not the whole city.
Not even close. Those areas are a tiny fraction of the market. The time of year you rent, whether the apartment is serviced, the building's amenities, all of that has a huge impact on the final price tag.
That flexibility sounds crucial, especially for someone under a professional assignment. You'd need comfortable, reliable housing without, a massive financial risk.
Exactly. And the good news is extended stay solutions are everywhere. Our sources give some specific monthly rent ranges that are, well, they're far more reasonable than most people think.
Okay, let's hear them.
For a standard studio apartment, you're probably looking at, say, $800 to $1,200 a month. A one-bedroom bumps that up to maybe $1,000 to $1,800.
Wow. Okay, just to put that in perspective. London, which our sources mention a lot. The average studio in a decent part of London, say Zone 2, is running closer to $2,500 a month right now.
Right, so suddenly Dubai's baseline housing cost looks much, much more competitive.
It really does. What about for a family or a shared setup?
A two-bedroom will average $1,500 to $3,000, and a three-bedroom is maybe $2,000 to $4,500. But, and this is a big but, there are a couple of major financial quirks here that you have to know about. They aren't obvious from just looking at a monthly price.
Okay, what are these hidden costs?
Well, first, traditional landlords often require rent to be paid in 1 to 4 annual checks, post-dated checks.
So you need a huge amount of cash up front.
You could need 3, 6, even 12 months rent available right when you sign. Now, that's changing. More monthly payment plans are popping up, but it's still a traditional hurdle. Second, you have to get an Ajari contract.
An Ajari, what is that? Why is it so important?
Ajari is the official mandatory government registration of your tenancy contract. It's your legal proof of residence. And for a professional expat, it's completely non-negotiable.
Why?
You can't get your residency visa. You can't set up utilities like water and electricity. You often can't even open a proper bank account without it. It adds a bit of an administrative cost up front, but it also gives you legal protection.
So if you know where to look and you're prepared for the admin, there are real opportunities. Where should a value-seeking professional actually focus their search?
The strategy is pretty simple. Look at areas built for resident professionals, not for tourists. The sources specifically point to places like Jumeirah Village Circle or JBC, International City, and Dubai Silicon Oasis, DSO.
And what's the trade-off living in those neighborhoods? Are you looking at a huge commute?
That is the critical question. These are mostly residential hubs, and they're designed for middle to upper income professionals. They have great housing, high quality amenities, pools, gyms, but they require a transport plan.
Ah, so they're not on the metro line.
A little less connected, for sure. You're often relying on feeder buses or your own car, so the trade-off is basically distance for comfort and a much lower rent.
What strikes me is how all these savings on daily life start to multiply the benefit of that lower housing cost. Once you've got the rent sorted, how much does daily life actually cost?
And this is where Dubai really starts to shine compared to other big global cities. We have to debunk this myth that every meal is some extravagant event.
Right.
The city's food scene caters to absolutely all budgets. You can find incredible, authentic meals for less than $10 a person if you just, avoid the main tourist traps.
Where would you look for that?
Think about areas like Kurama and Deira. These are older, historic residential areas with huge expat communities, Indian, Pakistani, Filipino. That demand drives all these little local cafeterias. You can get a shawarma or falafel sandwich for just a few dollars.
And that affordability extends to groceries too, right?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned these big hypermarket chains are everywhere.
Absolutely. A weekly shop for one person might cost you around 200 to 300 dirhams. So what's that? $55 to $82?
Let's ground that. What does that get you?
Well, a loaf of bread is maybe 3 to 5 dirhams, a liter of milk, 5 to 7, a dozen eggs, 10 to 15. The key is to stick to local brands and seasonal produce.
And the sources also mentioned the souks, the local markets, as a way to get even better deals.
For sure. Not the gold souk, that's for tourists. But the local produce souks, you'll find much better prices on fresh items there than in the big supermarkets.
Okay, now let's talk transport, because the sources call this a definite game changer for the city's affordability score.
It's an incredibly efficient, modern, and cheap public transport system. It's clean, it's expansive, it's really effective. The Dubai Metro often costs around 3.5 dirhams per ride. That's less than $1.
Less than $1. Compare that to taking the tube in London, where a single ride can be nearly $8. That's a massive, massive daily saving.
It really is. And even the taxis are metered. They're everywhere, and they're reasonable. Minimum fare is usually around 12 dirhams.
So what's the one piece of practical advice for someone just arriving?
Get a Knoll card immediately. It's a rechargeable smart card, and you need it for the metro, the buses, the trams. The whole network is integrated. It means you can get around the whole city cheaply without ever needing a car.
So if we connect all these smaller savings food, transport, non-prime housing to the bigger picture, they really multiply the value of Dubai's biggest financial draw, which is the tax system.
That's the ultimate reason so many professionals are there.
Right. The perception is that it's completely tax-free, which needs some careful handling. But for the individual expat, the two big draws are concrete: 0% income tax and 0% capital gains tax.
And that benefit just fundamentally changes the entire affordability equation compared to, well, almost any high-tax country.
That said, it's not entirely tax-free living, and you need to be aware of the caveats. What are they?
First, there's a 5% value-added tax, or VAT. It applies to most goods and services. Now, 5% is low compared to Europe, where it can be 20% or more, but you have to factor it into every single transaction: groceries, restaurants, shopping, even your utility bills.
And the second caveat,
You have to actually meet the requirements for tax residency in the UAE.
which, practically speaking, usually means what?
It typically means spending a certain amount of time physically in the country, maybe 183 days a year, and having a residency visa and a permanent home, like that Ijari registered rental contract we mentioned.
So if you still have strong ties back home, you might not get the full 0% benefit.
It's a strategic calculation you have to make. And speaking of calculations, you can't forget about utilities, especially in that climate.
The cost of air conditioning?
Exactly. Utilities are managed by DUDEVL, the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. And because AC is essential year-round, those bills can be surprisingly high, especially in the summer. You should probably budget maybe $150 to $300 a month just for DUDEVL.
That's a real cost that can eat into those tax savings if you're not ready for it.
It is. Which brings us back to that retail contradiction you see in the city. You have these spectacular places like the Dubai Mall.
But inside those malls, you find the city's duality. You'll see Gucci right next to H&M, designer jewelry next to a Zara.
And they're all anchored by these huge value-focused hypermarkets that everyone, locals and expats, uses for their budget shopping. The key is just exploring malls outside the main tourist centers. Places like Ibn Battuta Mall often have more competitive pricing. The luxury stuff is a choice. It's not a necessity.
So let's move beyond the numbers. What does all this mean for the professional expat's actual life? It's not just about money, it's about the environment you're living in.
Right. And beyond the financials, there are immediate quality of life benefits. The first one is safety. The sources all highlight exceptionally low crime rates and a very high sense of security. That's a huge advantage over many Western cities.
That is a tangible benefit. What about the professional logistics like healthcare and banking?
Healthcare is critical. Most mid to high level professionals will get mandatory employer provided private insurance, but you have to understand the scope of that insurance. Does it cover international treatment or just local clinics? Because out of pocket costs can be substantial if you go outside your network.
And what about managing your money? Setting up a bank account?
Well, you have to get a local bank account for your salary and daily expenses. The process is usually smooth, but again, you need your residency visa and that Ajari contract first.
Okay, so to sum this all up, our deep dive shows that Dubai can be surprisingly affordable, often on par with major European cities. But
But only if you're strategic.
exactly, you have to actively choose to look beyond the glitz of downtown and the marina for your housing, and you have to commit to using budget-friendly options like the metro. The online highlight reel is just fundamentally misleading.
The final takeaway for you, the listener, is this. The biggest variable cost you have is your housing, and the biggest fixed benefit is the 0% income tax. Therefore, the whole affordability question hinges on one thing: securing an extended stay solution at a price point you're comfortable with.
Right, maybe in a place like JVC or DSO, if you get that part right, the zero income tax benefit suddenly looks exponentially more attractive, and it balances the entire financial equation,
It really does.
which I think raises a really important final question. Given that 0% income tax benefit and the huge range in rental costs, does choosing a more affordable, non-central neighborhood effectively turn the real luxury of Dubai into something else? Not expensive visibility, but time and money saved.
I think that's a critical thought to hold on to. It shifts the whole equation from how much do I earn to how strategically do I live.
But a perfect thought to end on. We'll catch you next time for the next Tea Dive.